Okay, let me take a moment to go over the actual score ratings. I have a lot of tabs open, so I'm just going to get a couple things out of the way real quick so I can get them closed. As you can see, the before score for your website here for tonal law was a load time, according to this synthetic test, of usually it's right about 9 seconds. We got that down to 7.6 seconds. So there wasn't a lot to improve there, right? But you'll see as we go on. Wait, hold on a second. So staging, fully loaded 8.4 compared to regular, which was 13.5, right? So we decreased it by about 40%. So let's close. This is the non-staging environment. Let me close that because there's so many windows I have here. And let's also look at GTMetrix. So for the staging, and these are synthetic tests. The real test is when you go to it, how long does it take to load, right? So the staging here loads in 16 seconds, according to GTMetrix, which is horrible. You can't have a website that takes 16 seconds to load. You can't have that. That's horrible. And you can see the regular one used to report 23, so we decreased that about 40%. So these are called synthetic tests. What really matters is the eyeball tests, right? So if you go to your website and you do a new incognito window, put your website in, and I'm just going to count in my head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. So right about 2.5 to 3 seconds it took your website to load. I have a few of your competitors here. When I test, they were all right about the same. So Margaret Carlo, or Carl Law, ready? 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 so right about the same. Then we're going to go to this one. We're going to incognito window. We're going to 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. So that was a little quicker. That was right about 2, which is really good. But you can see here, they're just not loading a lot of stuff. So, well, I'm going to keep going. Let me get back to that. Law Island. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. So that's right about where you're at too. So all of them are within right about 2 to 3 seconds, which is really fast. Google says that you want to get things under 2 seconds. However, unless you have a dedicated server and you don't have a lot loading on your web page, that's not generally realistic. I mean, it's unrealistic even with if you had a really good dedicated server. So let me just show you. So the page speed insight scores. So before we did anything, you were getting a 15 on mobile, and on desktop you were getting a 43. On our improvement went from 15 to 32, and on desktop went from 43. I don't even know what this is. Let me go back. Let me go back. So this is the regular. So it went from 15 to 8. Wow. Okay, that got even worse. And that shows how inaccurate some of these are. And I will explain all this. And the desktop went from 43 to 32, even though it got faster. Go figure. This is why these scores drive people crazy, or drive people like me crazy. So just to show you, we will go look at eBay gets a 32. Amazon gets a 38. I'm going to pause it while I run a couple more. Okay, so I'm running it on CNN.com and FoxNews.com, so whatever your political preference is. Why it's doing that, let's go to FoxNews.com. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. So that was under 2 seconds. And we'll go to CNN.com. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Right about 3.5. Okay, yeah, that one might have started over. So Fox News loaded in under 2 seconds, and it's got a 15 on mobile, right? So I mean, CNN got a 0. See, so the problem with these tests are these tests are done from fast 3G to slow 4G connection. So the first contentful paint, which is the first time something loads on the screen. So let's do this, like 1 Mississippi, 2. So I saw the first thing at like 1.8 seconds. So let me take, so it's not taking 4.2 seconds like it's reporting here. So it's just inaccurate. It's just not true. Actually, this field data comes from actual users. But you can imagine there's a lot of people that are on See, this is on mobile. A lot of people that are coming, and this is desktop, right? So it should be 2.7 seconds. But there's a lot of people that are coming from real slow connections. Lab data here, this is stuff that's on the fast 3G, slow 4G connection. So you can imagine GTMetrix for CNN says it took 45 seconds to load. Clearly, that's not the case. For Fox News, 42 seconds. Clearly, that's not the case. Look at these scores. 1740. Clearly, that's not true. Amazon, 10.9 seconds to load. These are the people that say for every, what is it? I don't even know. I don't even remember. Every 1/10 of a second slower your page takes to load, they lose, what, 2% in revenue or something like that? I could be totally off, but something like that. 14 seconds to load on YouTube. That's clearly not true. eBay, 15 seconds to load. That's not true. So these things, and there's articles on this, and you can see here, this article really explains it really well. Let me show you why this is horribly misleading. If you go to GTMetrix for your staging website, and it said you're getting an F grade for not having expires headers on these. You can't add expires headers to Google.com, Google Tag Manager, CloudFront.net. You can't do anything with this because they're not on your website. You know, it's not on, your law firm website. It says use a CDN, but I believe you are using a CDN. So we could look into configuring it a little more, but your website certainly is not taking 16 seconds to load. Reduce the number of DOM elements. Now, your DOM is just your website kind of in a container. That's very oversimplified, but it's going to be whatever it is. If you don't want it to be that large, then you just have to remove stuff, right? So you're getting a 29 on that, even though your website is 1.4 megabytes and the average web page is 3.3 megabytes on the web. So your web page is about half what the average is. And I would say that's even low because the people that run tests here, know that they need to get their website small. So the people that don't run tests on GTMetrix, which are overwhelming majority, probably have bigger sites and don't know about it. Make fewer HTTP requests. I mean, if you're going to use a lot of plugins, you're going to have style sheets. Now, could we go in and get rid of some of those? Sure, but we'd have to go in and test all that. Reduce DNS lookups. Like you're using Google Tag Manager, so it's going to do a DNS lookup. And I think you could preload some of this, prefetch it, I should say. Google APIs, tonal law. Well, this is the main, not the staging. Google font. So all this stuff, just you're getting dinged on this up here, and for here, even though there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about this stuff. I mean, you could do something about it, but you'd have to remove everything from your website, all of these cascading style sheets, which I'm assuming you're using for certain reasons. Like if you wanted to get rid of the attorney press, you would not be using this CSS anymore, right? If you wanted to get rid of dash icons, which is probably some plugin, you would get rid of this CSS, right? The thing that is strange to me, so hopefully that makes sense. So it's the same thing down here. If you look at all these recommendations from PageSpeed Insights, it's the same type of thing. These same these websites should be used as guides to tell you, like, it's saying you don't want to, CSS is just render blocking. It is what it is. You can't see, it's a render blocking thing, just like JavaScript is render blocking. So these things are going to render block if you're using them. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to either not use them or they're going to render block a little bit. I mean, it takes 100, so almost 0.2 seconds for this one. You have to have that. You have to have Bootstrap. So there's no way around it. Remove unused JavaScript, like I'm assuming you're using CAPTCHA. So there's some JavaScript we could look at and see if you need it. Like I'm sure you're using some type of analytics. So I don't know why. This is not 100% accurate. So it's saying removed unused JavaScript, but I'm sure like your chat widget, I'm sure that's being used. It just didn't pop up yet or something, or I didn't activate it, right? So, and this is the same kind of stuff. So this stuff can be, it's very frustrating for like people like me who do this for a living. I shouldn't say frustrating. It's because I wish they would not even have these number scores here. Right? You know what I mean? Because they can be horribly misleading. And that's the first thing people who don't have experience in this look at. Now, could you get them a little higher? We probably could, but it's not going to matter because your website still is loading in 2.8 seconds, which is really good. Right? So anything over 10 seconds is horrible. Anything under between 5 and 7, I would say, is mediocre. 5 to 3 is good, and under 3 is really good. So you're in that really good range. So there's not many websites, as I showed you, either Amazon, eBay, CNN, Fox News, all of those load at about the same time as yours. And you can imagine they have like some of the smartest people in the world working on their websites. So there's not much. I mean, so the things I would improve, I would look at. So you have these things loading on your website. You're loading all this CSS in these short little load times. This is really, really good. This is all really good stuff. So if you need all this CSS, like this is a problem when these things are real long. These lines are real long. Let's look at some of your competitors. See how these lines look really long, but the complete load time is 2 seconds, is a little over 2 seconds. So they appear long, but in context of only 2 seconds, they're not really that long. But you can see here, so let's go back. I hope I didn't minimize it. So even though it's long, it still only took a half a second to load this cascading style sheet. See all this JavaScript, so this one took a half second even though it's real long. A half second for you is probably from about here to here. So the only thing that really sticks out that you could do, well, first of all, if you stay on your web page long enough, a chat box pops up, like, can we help you? That might be artificially increasing your page load time. So we might want to disable that and do these tests again. The only other thing that sticks out, I mean, and you got to remember, you're not hand coding your stuff. If you're hand coding your stuff, you could really get into all these tweaks. You could really do a lot of this stuff. However, you have to rely on the coding of the plugin developers and the coding of WordPress, right? So there's not much you can do about that stuff. And if I would recommend take 5 or 10 of your favorite websites, plug them into Web Page Test, plug them into GTMetrix, and plug them into Google PageSpeed Insights, and you'll see that they all have similar rankings probably, but the bottom line is you really want to look at is just, for the most part, there's other things like First Paint and what's it called, Jagger. I can't remember the word right now. But load time is the ultimate. It's all about user experience. All these metrics are kind of artificial. The Web Core Vital stuff is good, but it's also can be a little bit misleading, right? So I think I did load all your competitors' pages, and they all loaded right about the same length yours did, right about 3 seconds. So that's really good. So what I was going to suggest here, just make sure you're using all these plugins. So what we could do, we could disable all of your plugins temporarily and run this test and see what happens. If this, okay, that's not yours. And see what this goes down to. It's probably going to decrease because, you know, your plugins is what's loading all this stuff, and WordPress and your theme, blah, blah, blah. And then we could start re-enabling it one by one to determine what's slowing things down. However, nothing is, these are really good load times, these short bars. So there's nothing that's slowing anything down. The only thing I think might help a little bit with these fonts, you have a lot of fonts loading, and it looks like, see, Monerset, however you pronounce it, Monerset. So it looks like it's loading the same font that's Bitter, which is, I guess, a font, So it looks like it's loading this font over and over and over again for some reason. So that might be something where you could get a little load time back. And even if you look at the waterfall chart from GTmetrix, it looks even more apparent. So if you see here, see these short little loading times? This is all really good. Like, see this, boom, 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 boom. But then when it gets to the fonts, you can see this is where things get slowed down here. See all these long lines? Now, why it doesn't show these long lines over here, I don't know. This is because these are synthetic tests and they're not perfect. But you can see if you click on it, Monerset. So you could play around with the fonts. I don't know if you have a font plugin or something that's slowing things down. I have no idea. You'd have to go look at it. I spoke with the guy, I can't remember his name, Fahed, perhaps. Fahed. And he's told me just send this suggestion and go back to the developers. So I'm not sure who, quote unquote, the developers are, but they need to look at this and find out why all this stuff. So all this stuff up here, let me go back here. Even with this synthetic test, right until the fonts loads, it's taking about, so what is this line? 4.4 seconds. It's just the fonts are, that's where the extra load time's coming in. If you look at GTMetrix, it looks, for some reason, they don't have the time scale up here. But you can see how fast everything is, all this, all this, all this. And then it loads, and then it gets here, and there's this long delay and these fonts come. Even though it doesn't appear, right? It looks like it's loading fine to me. Yeah, so let me show you. So you can look at what's called the film strip view. So this is, it's not your web page. Film strip view. So you can see nothing at 0 seconds. It starts loading at 2 seconds. Right here, the screen starts painting. So you start to see this, right? It's just a little screenshot. According to this test. Now, if I do, so let's do one misses. So in under 1 second, I started seeing painting. So these tests are not 100%, not 100% at all. They're just good guidelines. As if I load your page and it's loading in 2 to 3 seconds, but this test is showing 20 seconds, and you could try to find and see what's going on in those fonts, but there's not much that we can figure out why that's happening, perhaps, but you can hopefully track down and do something with those fonts to find out why that load time's apparently on these tests showing that it takes longer. However, you're not going to be able to get the load time down any lower, right? So we reduced the load time, I believe it was by like 40%, perhaps, something like that. And we got it down to right between 2.2 and 3.1 seconds, which is really good. And I think before it was at between 2.8 and 4.2 seconds, something like that. But again, and I'm probably going on and on, but I just want to hammer home. If you just Google for why GTmetrix scores don't matter, there's all kinds of, boom, read that, scores don't matter. There's just all kinds of articles from here, half the battle. So there's all kinds of things here you can read. So it's not just my opinion. This is really the truth. Now, the bad thing is Google does use, there's not humans. I mean, there are humans testing pages, but it's not always humans that are not always testing load. So it has to rely on some type of metric, right? So it does hurt you that way. But again, there's not only so much you can do with it. Now, we could dig into this by disabling plugins, enabling plugins, and finding out what's what, but that's a pretty time-consuming thing. But as you can see, Amazon, eBay, and go plug in 5 or 10 of your favorite websites. All of them are going to have these low scores. So I hope this cleared things up. I'm definitely open to helping more, to improving some of the synthetic test scores, which, in my opinion, I wouldn't waste that much time with. But there's going to be, unless you're hand coding your website, unless you're open to removing some things, there's probably not much more you can do. So I hope this helps, and let me know if you got any questions. See ya.